Welcome back, everybody. I'm Zach, and that's Tyler over there, and welcome to our Week 1 recap of the NFL. I know that it's technically not a full recap because we are missing Monday night, but that's just how it is when your co-star is going to teach and coach the youth of America. He's doing his part to ensure that a new generation comes to love football as much as our viewers do. So just hang in with us. We'll be able to recap Monday nights later in the season, but until his middle school season's over, Tyler, we're going to have to skip Monday nights for now. But we have a lot to cover. Week 1 recap. We're going to start with the ref call of the week. Then we're going to move in to our team's games and kind of explaining whether it's time to hit the panic button for Lions and Chiefs fans. And then I'll do my weekly fantasy preview, and then we'll send it to Tyler for some must-watch games for Week 2. But without further ado, let's talk about the biggest ref controversy of the week. What is Spitgate, Tyler? And it wasn't properly.
Yeah, we'll talk about some spitting this week. But first off, just to provide the audience a little bit of context. So, like Zach said, I do coach middle school football, and our games are on Tuesdays, and I just do not have the energy to teach a full day at school and then coach 2 games of middle school football and then come home and record. So we are recording on Monday evenings to prevent me from having to do that until about late October. But before we get into the spitting, there was one other, technically not a penalty call, but there's one other official's call that I do want to address because I've seen some stuff on Twitter, and that is, was the Bills player out of bounds in time before the first half ended on Sunday Night Football? I've seen some tweets be very pro Ravens in this situation. I saw one tweet that literally said the Ravens saw the clock expire during the play. They ran off the field, but the ref said, "Hold on, Baltimore. There's still a second left for precious Josh Allen." And I want to address that because I don't think there's any merit there. I think that when you look at the replay, the Bills player was clearly out of bounds before the clock hit 0. The clock turned to 0 very quickly after, but you do see his butt hit the white out of bounds before the clock hit 0. So I think it's an accurate call of the game clock there. I bring that up because the Bills did end up winning on a last second field goal. So if you take that away, yeah, they don't have that last second field goal opportunity. But like you said, the real ref calls this week is what constitutes an ejection? Because you have Jalen Carter spitting at Dak Prescott, which does make sense that does warrant an ejection. But then in the Chiefs game, someone to Travis Kelce right in the face, and there's not an ejection. And so I agree that Jalen Carter should have been ejected. I disagree that the slap on the face from a defensive player should not warrant an ejection because it's the same move that got Shiloh Sanders ejected in the preseason game. But we don't have an ejection on this one.
I think that a point of clarity, though, and I just want to make sure that this doesn't change your opinion. The reason why the referees did not eject the player in the Chiefs-Chargers game, and it was said on the broadcast, is the fact that it was an open hand rather than a closed fist. Is that in the rule book, or is that just something that the rules analyst says to defend the refs on the broadcast?
I've never heard of the open palm versus closed palmed stipulation before the broadcaster said it last night. So I understand where they're coming from. Like, this isn't a punch, but but either way, like a forcible flagrant foul, and flagrant's a basketball term, I do realize that, but a forcible contact to the head of another player well after the play was over, to me, that's an ejection. Open palm, closed palm, to me, that's an ejection.
I've seen players ejected for a lot less. Brian Branch last season, who made just a football play and was ejected. It certainly wasn't a flagrant, as you said, after the play, extracurricular action. Mm-hmm. Very similar to Jalen Carter, because obviously Jalen Carter's wasn't brutal or physical in nature, but it still warranted an ejection because it was completely extracurricular in nature. And
Yes.
I think that's up to the discretion of the officiating crew. So maybe I don't know if it was Gene Steratore, but he gets all the flack whenever we clown on them calling a rules analyst into the broadcast. Whatever the Gene
Right.
Steratore or his impersonator said, I believe it was just kind of saying, as a former referee, this is how I would have officiated it, and this is how I would have seen it. But I do agree. I've never heard it or seen it written down in the rule book anywhere.
Mhm.
I don't believe the NFL is like, if you slap someone open hand across the face, you're fine. That's just a 15-yard penalty. I don't think the NFL would want to write that down. I think it's at the discretion of officials.
And I agree. It is an official discretion, but I've never heard that before. Like you said, it's extremely extracurricular in nature. If you do that in any other sport, open palm or closed palm, you get except for maybe hockey, you do get ejected. A- and maybe that's just my Chiefs bias coming out here. I'll admit that I'm not prone to some Chiefs bias from time to time. But to me, that's an ejection, and this is a defensive player that had a lot of impact on the game, especially in the second half. He knocked down a lot of passes, and so this is a call that I would argue did affect the game a little bit, and a
Yeah,
call that
I
I again disagree with.
I I I am a Detroit Lions fan. I do root for the Chiefs when I'm in the presence of Tyler because I want to root with him. It's a lot more fun than rooting against him. See Dallas Detroit 2023. But I agree.
We'll
I do
talk about
believe
that
that
game
it
one day.
sometime. I do believe that it also should have been an ejection solely because of its extracurricularness. Like
Mhm.
last year, my team was the victim of an ejection of a play that happened during the act. It was a pass breakup that happened during the game, and he was still ejected. I thought that was well out of line by the NFL, but I have no issues if you decide to swing on someone in the open view of the referees after a completely normal play. It's not like was it against Josh Simmons? I think it was against the left
For the
tackle.
Chiefs one,
Yeah.
no, it was against Travis Kelce. He struck
Oh,
he
that's
struck
right, right,
Travis
right.
Kelce.
Sorry, I knew it was a player blocking. Uh, But yeah, Travis Kelce didn't do anything on that play that even warranted a reaction like that.
No.
In my opinion, I thought it was just a physical, normal block. And so I don't think the NFL should take a softer stance on that than like spitting on a player or a
No,
dirty
I
hit after the play.
agree.
But
I agree. All in all, though, I thought it was a pretty good week for officials. There was no excruciating "what in the world" call. We'll certainly have some of those. We got a Super Bowl rematch next week. We'll certainly have some questionable calls that people are calling for. But pretty good day. I don't get into the refs missed this holding call in the third quarter and that affected the whole fourth quarter. I don't get into all that. Um, so outside of maybe a couple missed holding calls in a mediocre game, I thought it was a pretty good week for officials
I thought it
personally.
was this is a testament to how much the NFL officials have improved over the offseason. I don't know what the NFL did,
Hmm.
but I was watching a Clete Blakeman officiated game, and normally I hate watching Clete Blakeman officiated games, but it was a really fair game. My team lost because they stunk, not because the refs made any bad calls, and it stings a lot less when that happens. And I'm really proud of the NFL for seemingly taking serious action this offseason because I can't remember a week last year that didn't have a catastrophic game altering late game
Yeah,
penalty. I mean, every week
yeah.
it was either the Chiefs or one of the primetime games that suffered. And last night we got to enjoy a Sunday night football game that was spectacular and wasn't plagued by a single bad ref call, in my opinion. Nobody was
No,
talking about the
I
refs
agree.
after that game. And that's a testament to the NFL taking action and improving their officiating, which I believe was one of their biggest weaknesses last season. This segment, I don't believe is going away. I do think like you said, we will have more ref calls to discuss. But when we discussed starting this podcast, 8 to 10 months ago, one of our flagship segments was going to be breaking down ref calls because they were so prevalent and horrific last season. So
Yeah,
I hope
the
that this
refs
is a
did
sign of
good.
things to
How?
come.
Yeah, refs did good. How did we do? We talked about fantasy football last week. How did we fare in our fantasy football Tinder?
So the debut was a mixed bag because I told you guys to fade Terry McLaurin. We even posted a short about it, and it ended up being a smash hit. He only had 4 points. He continues to be missing against the Giants, and it looked like I knew
And
what
you
I was
called it
talking
because
about.
of the matchup. Yeah, you
Exactly.
called it because you directly mentioned that the Giants defense stopped Terry McLaurin very well. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah. However, I had some misses. I don't know if you're going to count Javonte Williams against me. Viewers, have some leniency, okay? How am I supposed to know Jalen Carter is going to spit on Dak Prescott before the first play? I think that hugely impacted how Javonte Williams played. I did mention that he was the clear number one back, but I said the matchup was bad. Well, the matchup instantly became a lot more favorable when arguably their best defensive player doesn't play a snap.
So
And then
let me ask you this then, real quick. I don't mean to interrupt, but now I'm thinking as a fantasy football owner, if my league has Javonte Williams on the waiver wire, should I pick him up, or was that a fluke because of Jalen Carter's spit?
I still think he's worth a pickup because of his usage. He was utilized a lot against what I still believe is a good defense in Philly, regardless of Jalen Carter is there or not. And if you can run on Philly, you can run on a lot of teams in this league. Wouldn't you agree? Even with Jalen Carterless, his usage is encouraging,
I'd agree with
but
that.
he's going to be a matchup play. He's not a Jahmyr Gibbs, Derrick Henry type guy where you start every week, no matter what the matchup is. He's
Okay.
definitely a matchup based play and worth a pickup if he's available. I know I made the pickup right before the game just to stash him. I benched him like I told you guys to do. And I don't regret the choice because it was a bad matchup. Another
Okay.
player that I think I is technically a miss, but I'm going to give myself half credit. You're a teacher. You can decide whether I deserve half credit or full credit on this one. Is Josh Jacobs. He was held to less than 3.5 yards per carry. And for 3.5 quarters, the Lions' run defense was staunch. They weren't letting anything through, but he scored a late short yardage rushing touchdown that salvaged his day. He went from scoring under 10 points to 14 points, which I do believe is still an underperformance. And the matchup was bad, even with the Lions playing one of the worst games in the Dan Campbell era. So I'm going to give myself at least half credit, even though he scored a touchdown.
I'd give you some credit there too, because I don't think that Josh Jacobs is going to always get those late score touchdowns in garbage time.
Right.
So if you take away that late score touchdown, he's got 7 points.
Yes,
If
7 or
that,
8 points. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's really the correct number out of what Josh Jacobs got. It certainly helped fantasy owners that started him, but yeah, I don't think you can expect that out of Josh Jacobs week in and week out.
Right, exactly. And a touchdown dependent option still probably warrants a fade, in my opinion. And then the last player I had you guys swipe left on is DeAndre Swift, who is actively playing right now. But as of right now, it's halftime. He has 6 points. Do with that information what you will. If he goes off in the second half, I'm not held liable. Where I think that I don't deserve a whole lot of credit is my swipe rights. I gave you guys David Montgomery. The game plan was just never to run it. The Lions don't look as good as they did last year in the offensive line. They're going to need some more time to mesh before he becomes an everyday starter. Drake May played okay, but he wasn't lights out. I will give myself half credit because I think he at least didn't completely crap the bed. James Conner was excellent, so I'll give myself full credit on that one. He completely dominated against the Saints. Isaiah Pacheco stunk. He did the most with his opportunities. 5 yards a carry. He got a couple catches, and then that's all. And then Mark Andrews was my biggest miss of the week. Oh my gosh. The Ravens score 41 points. Lamar Jackson goes nuts. It's a crazy high-scoring game, one of the best in our century, and Mark Andrews gets 1 target for 5 yards. Listen, I hate to admit that Tyler is right, but you have never been more right than you were last week when you told me I'm not getting burned by this guy again.
Yep.
I'm fading Mark Andrews every single matchup the rest of the week. The rest of the year, it does not matter. That usage is some of the least encouraging. They were playing backup tight ends and splitting them out wide before they threw to Mark Andrews. He is purely a blocking tight end in that Ravens offense. do not expect his receiving upside to be anywhere near it was in his last couple of seasons. Huge miss by me.
I agree, and that's where I kind of give myself credit. I said last week you kind of convinced me a little. I was like, maybe the matchup's good, but I said last week like I don't like Mark Andrews. I think Mark Andrews is one of the best tight ends in the NFL right now. The downside is Lamar Jackson does not know he's a Baltimore Raven. And I also gave myself credit with Drake Maye. I don't like really any Patriots player. I don't think if you've got a Patriots player on your lineup, oof, I'm sorry, but you're not making the playoffs. I don't like Patriots players. Just I don't think their team's good at all. I don't think any of them are good. I think they're a bunch of bums on that team. Drake being one of them. I'll admit that I missed on Scary Terry. I thought the Commanders are really good, and that despite kind of previous matchups, Terry McLaurin's going to do really well. He did not do really well. I want to take one thing off your chest though, is with David Montgomery. David Montgomery doing bad, and really the whole Lions doing bad, is not their fault. The reason the Lions did so bad is because I bet money on them.
Yeah, this is all on you.
And I am notoriously horrid at sports betting. Viewers, I want you to listen to this story. I'm so bad at sports betting. If you go back, my record's so bad. When the Chiefs and Bills played each other in the divisional matchup a couple years ago in Buffalo, the Bills were on pace to drive down the field, score a touchdown, take a lead against the Chiefs, and finally overcome Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. And then the 2-minute warning hit. And I was like, I have to do what I have to do. And I placed a $1 money line bet on the Buffalo Bills. The first play coming out of the 2-minute warning, Josh Allen overthrew a wide open, I think it was Gabe Davis. He overthrew a wide open Gabe Davis in the end zone. The very next play, pass is wide right. Chiefs take over, win the game.
I remember this so vividly, and I would be remiss if I also didn't mention you placing a bet on the Philadelphia Eagles ahead of the Chiefs Super Bowl victory 3 seasons ago or 2 seasons ago.
It was Super Bowl 57.
I believe that was 3 seasons ago. Yeah,
It's 3 seasons ago now. Yeah.
I remember that bet vividly because because that was kind of the first experiment that you had with your betting jinx.
That playoff series, because I also bet money on the Bengals in the AFC Championship game that year as well.
So this is not just a one-time thing, viewers. I promise you, historic sports betting jinx. He even told me on Friday night, he's like, "I'm putting money on your Lions," and I yelled in agony. I knew that we were going to lose from that moment on. I should have changed my pick'em, but he's not allowed to put any more money on the Lions the rest of the season. I've made sure of that. His tires are in danger if he does.
My sports betting aside, what else did you see out of Detroit? What's happening?
So here's my breakdown, and the kind of question I posed in the intro is, should the Lions fans be pressing the panic button? And a lot of them already are on Twitter, and more so than I've ever seen in the Dan Campbell era. And the answer is no. I thought that there was room to gain for the play calling in both fronts, but it is genuinely the first game that either of these two coordinators have called. And I thought that the defense coming out of the second half was excellent. They allowed no points in the third quarter, and they only allowed points once the offense started turning it over on fourth down plays deep in their own territory. For me, that's a win for the defense. Had the Lions offense been somewhat competent, the defense would have held the Packers to 17. That's a huge win in your first game as a coordinator. Obviously, tons to improve on. The pass rush didn't look good, and they dropped Aiden Hutchinson into coverage multiple times, a decision that I vehemently disagree with. But I think that they're going to clean those decisions up. They're going to let Aiden Hutchinson pin his ears back and stop trying to do some cute stuff. Not everyone can be Brian Flores, but the defensive coordinator is a lot easier to fix than the offensive coordinator. And I don't put all the blame on John Morton. I don't think his game plan was very good, but anybody's game plan gets blown up when your interior offensive line cannot block at all. Graham Glasgow, Christian Mahogany, and rookie Tate Ratledge all had sub 60 PFF grades on both running and passing. They were horrific. Nobody can do anything if you can't control the line of scrimmage. And for once, the Lions were not controlling the line of scrimmage, especially on the interior. I thought the tackles played all right, but the interior was horrific. So if the offensive line gets cleared up against the Bears, I think the game plans will flow a lot better for the offense. It's not time to panic yet, as this is a brand new offensive line. But those were the things that I noticed. And things to watch for the game against the Bears. If those things don't improve, then maybe we can start inching towards that panic button for Detroit. But they've started 1-1 in every season dating back to 2022. There's gonna be some growing pains, especially this year. But I don't know. Did you notice anything as an outside observer from Detroit that you think I didn't touch?
For me, I mean, you touched the offensive line. The offensive line did not look good, and for me, you know, I struggle to think that that's something you can improve on week to week. I mean, maybe I don't know what the Bears' defensive linemen look like entirely. I know they're not probably quite as good as the Packers, but if the offensive line can't handle good teams, then I don't think you guys have a playoff picture this year. And maybe you get to the playoffs, but I don't think you have the ability to do a playoff run if that offensive line can't mesh well. And I mean, I couldn't tell if the Packers defense was really good or if Detroit's offense was just off because I saw missed connections. I saw players being covered constantly. I saw Goff take a bunch of sacks. The offense just did not look like a typical Dan Campbell offense that we've come to know the last couple of years. And so something was just off beyond just the pressure that Goff was taking from the offensive line.
So I point you to Lions fans are like, oh my gosh, the lack of Ben Johnson. It's the end. The asteroid is nearing downtown Detroit. Woodward Avenue is in flames. Listen, last year against Tampa Bay, we scored 16 points and we went 1-7 in the red zone. That was week 2. And that was with an experienced offensive line and Ben Johnson. It's the same thing. When the Detroit Lions make the choice every year to not play their starters and not have a dress rehearsal in the preseason, you're going to have missed assignments, especially when between your two guards, you have 2 NFL starts. Give them time, give them experience. Dan Campbell said there was a lot of missed assignments. So if there was a lot of missed assignments, that's cleanable. That's fixable. It wasn't a skill issue, I don't think. It was a lot of miscommunication and missed assignments that will get cleaned up with coaching and game planning. And so that's my point. The Lions have had a stinker in the early games against what will be a great team in Green Bay, I think. Give them time to clean it up. This has happened before. That's why I said don't hit the panic button yet. I wouldn't be talking about missing the playoffs until we see what happens in Chicago. But speaking of not hitting the panic button, I want to shift over to the Kansas City Chiefs a little bit. Should Chiefs fans even be near the panic button, or is this just a flawless game by the Chargers?
It is the perfect time to panic in Kansas City. I'm going to be straight up. Not because of the offensive performance, but because of the defensive performance. I'm panicking for the defense. Not because of Spags. Spags loses here and there, right? Not because of Andy Reid or Patrick Mahomes, but because of our secondary. Like you and I at training camp, we talked all camp long, all summer long that the secondary worries me. Not Trent McDuffie, but Cook and Hicks being our top safeties worries me. The lack of Justin Reed is going to be felt this season. I don't think it's going to be 2018 defense, but it's certainly not going to be 2022 or 2023 defense. I think we're going to be somewhere in between 2020 and 2018. So not as bad as 2018, but not as good as 2020. 2020 was where the Chiefs went 14-2, but that was primarily an offensive reason, not necessarily a defensive reason. And that's really what it comes down to. The Chiefs' run defense looked horrible. The Chiefs' passing defense looked even worse. For me, because of the secondaries, the sky is not collapsed on KC because we still have a guy named Patrick Mahomes, but the clouds are in KC for sure.
I also think there's a name that you didn't mention that's getting a concerning amount of playtime, and it's kind of because Spags is a little bit in love with him. And that's Chamari Connor. That guy needs to find his way off the field as your nickel defender. He looked really poor in that game. I think that if the Chiefs get Christian Fulton up to speed and have him take that place, it becomes less bleak. And I also think a reason that the Chiefs lost is because Greg Roman, in the offensive coordinator for the Chargers, inexplicably just decided we are going to go pass heavy. He was the offensive coordinator in Baltimore, and they're one of the more run heavy teams in football. Last year, the Chargers were run heavy. Inexplicably, he just decides, let's air it out on Kansas City. I don't think Spags was ready for it, truly, and I don't think the players were ready for it. I think they were keyed in on the run, and they didn't figure it out until too late. And by that time, Justin Herbert, all he had to do was run out the clock. So I don't think it's quite panic time as much as you do, but they need to figure out what to do with Jaden Hicks at safety, more so than wide receiver. I think Mahomes has played with worse receiving cores and made do. The secondary is more
absolutely.
The secondary is more concerning because they played like crap.
No, 100%. Yeah, and Trent McDuffie and Jalen Watson, lockdown corners. I agree if you get Christian Fulton in instead of Shamari Connor, that's going to improve. But that does not fix the safety concern of Hicks and Cook.
I agree.
I think that's a massive weak. I think that's like playing Daniel Sorensen constantly at strong safety. And that's going to sink the ship. Unless Patrick Mahomes has a 2022 or 2018 season where he's outright MVP, clear-cut MVP, this might be the first time that the Chiefs don't reach the AFC Championship game. If you've got a team like Buffalo and Baltimore that are playing lights out and mistake-free football for once in the playoffs, Chiefs aren't getting out of that alive this time.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in Philly because Philly also looked a little bit beatable. Sorry, Philly fans. Please don't come to my house and slash my tires. I know that you guys watch these videos. Philly looked beatable, and I'm sure you guys were pissed off you didn't beat Dallas by 90, but they looked beatable. And so it's going to be interesting to see two powerhouse teams that look a little beatable coming into a week 2 matchup still early on in the season, but they're going to have to work out their kinks in those games if either one of them wants to come out with a win, because Mahomes is still very dangerous, regardless of whether his defense is good or not. We've seen that he can take over games, and he kind of knows when to turn it on. So I think that's a good thing to end it on there, is that little preview. We're going to preview next week now, starting with some fantasy Tinder again, if you're ready for that, Tyler.
Let's do it.
So last week, my faves were on point, but my starts were not. So I'm going to start with a player that I think is a no-brainer, and it's Hollywood Brown of Kansas City. Xavier Worthy is going to miss at least one game with a dislocated shoulder after running into Travis Kelce. Hollywood Brown is their clear number 1 receiver, and what we saw in training camp, I think he has the talent to seriously get some volume in Kansas City that makes him fantasy viable at least next week. Once again, these are only week-by-week matchups now that we're in the season. So what do you think on Hollywood? You're the Chiefs guy.
Hollywood's a swipe right for me. He had a great game this week against the good Chargers secondary. That Philly's got a good secondary, but I think they lost some pieces over the offseason that I do not expect this Super Bowl rematch to be a rematch of the score. In addition, like you said, Rice is out. Worthy's probably going to miss a couple weeks. Kelsey's old. There's no one else there. I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster at wide receiver 2. The only person Patrick can throw to is Hollywood Brown. And I think with the way the Super Bowl happened last year, I think Andy Reid's going to dial up a lot of passing to really show that Super Bowl was a fluke. I'm swiping right on Hollywood Brown.
Swipe right, definitely. But we'll move on to the next player. And this is another Chief, Isaiah Pacheco. I think you know my opinions on this, but how would you swipe on Isaiah Pacheco in the next week's matchup versus Philly?
I'm a swipe left on Pacheco. I think the Eagles' pass rush is incredible. Their front 7 is really good. You're gonna have Jalen Carter come out completely healthy and fresh.
No kidding.
I don't think the Chiefs' run game is going to be very good this week, so I'm swiping left on Pacheco. And even if the Chiefs' run game is good, I think Kareem Hunt gets the ball.
Yeah, not only you brought up Jalen Carter, he's in my notes as well, but the one other thing that you didn't bring up that I want to bring up on why I'm swiping left on Pacheco is his usage. He did not get red zone snaps. Kareem Hunt checked in during those snaps. It's clear that Matt Nagy and Andy Reid still value Kareem Hunt's bowling ball running style in the red zone. And if Isaiah Pacheco is not getting red zone targets, he's useless in fantasy. His usage is not inspiring at all. He is a huge swipe left. But moving on to another running back, we're going to talk about J.K. Dobbins today. He's going to play the Colts. He's on Denver Broncos this year, signed away from L.A., the Chargers. So what do you think on J.K. Dobbins?
J.K. Dobbins is a matchup dependent for me. If you're just general starter sit, I would sit him. I would swipe left. I think he's kind of past his time. I don't think Denver looked very good last week, and it might just be for week one jitters, but I just don't think I would start J.K. Dobbins unless I really need him to.
Yeah, I'm swiping left on him as well because the Colts defense looks sneaky good against the Dolphins. The storyline is obviously the Miami Dolphins playing like crap, and they did. But the Colts still had to play good defense to make the Miami Dolphins look like they were in hell all Sunday. And so I think the Colts may sneak up on some people. Their offense also looked good enough to control the ball for long periods of time and at least make this a ball control game in which and if that's the case, J.K. Dobbins only got 53% of the snaps last week. R.J. Harvey looked explosive, the rookie who's sitting behind him. I imagine that usage is going to be concerning the rest of the season, starting with their week 2 matchup against the Colts. Swipe left on J.K. Dobbins. Now we're going to move on to quarterbacks this week. I have Justin Fields of the New York Jets. Thoughts on him?
Who are the Jets playing this week? Remind me.
The Jets are playing the Bills.
Swipe left.
Really?
Bills. Listen, the Bills are not good because of their defense by any means at all. But I think the Jets are going to be the Jets. And I don't think Justin Fields is really the answer in New York. If you have Justin Fields as your quarterback, I would certainly look at who the backup is. But I'm not high on Justin Fields this week.
So the reason why is I'm high on him, and I'm going to actually swipe right on Justin Fields is twofold. Number one, he played some of his best football in his career against the Steelers' vaunted defense last week. They put up 32 points, and it was largely because of his rushing and passing ability. And secondly, the Bills just allowed 40 points to a mobile quarterback. I feel like that's a weakness for them. I know that Lamar's going to Lamar, but if Fields is able to put up 32 against the Steelers, who I think is a much better defense, I can't imagine that he's not going to do the same thing against the Bills, especially in a game where they might be trailing and he might have to throw the ball a little bit more. Justin Fields, for volume alone, whether he wins the game is irrelevant. For volume alone is a swipe right this week for me.
Just feels like a trap to me. Fields showed up great. The Bills defense gave up a lot. This is a perfect scenario for that quarterback to do well and then does not. It just feels like a trap to me. I would not go too deep into week one storylines to set my week 2 lineup.
And that's fair. Week 1 is a lie. But I also think that mobile quarterbacks do have a higher floor, and especially against a team that gave up a lot of rushing yards to Lamar, that floor is at least high enough to maybe justify a swipe right. But moving on to another quarterback who I think we'll both
Something to watch for though this upcoming week, though.
We'll definitely check back on that storyline to see what happens. But we're going to move on to a player that I have no doubt will agree on, and that's Jared Goff. A lot of people hyped him up coming into this season. He was 5th in MVP voting last year. Swipe left on Jared Goff until his offensive line figures it out, if they ever do. But especially until they figure it out. Week 2, instant swipe left for me.
Interesting, because I actually disagree. For me,
really,
kind of for the same reason that I swiped left on Fields. I think week 1 is oftentimes a lie. I think Jared Goff has so much experience in a lot of different offenses, changing offenses. He's got so many weapons on his team that I think if the Lions know their offensive line has weaknesses like they figured out last week, I think we can see a lot of screen passes to Jameson Williams. We can get Sam Laporta open in the middle. You've still got one of the best receivers in football in Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's, in my opinion, at least a top 5. I think that part's inarguable. Um, I, against the Chicago Bears team that Jared Goff has played time and time again. I know it's a different Chicago Bears, but for me, I think week 1 is a lie. That's why I'm swiping left on Fields, and it's also why I'm swiping right on Goff.
Interesting. I think it's going to be super fun to check back on, especially the quarterbacks week by week.
Yeah.
Because I think that you could still be right, and I could still be right. Jared Goff could
Yeah.
play really well
It's
in Chicago
very
and
up
not
in the
be
air.
fantasy. Well, I could say we could both be right simultaneously because he could play really well in Chicago and not be super fantasy viable.
It's fair.
And so it'll be interesting to check back and see on that. But my final player is rookie Emeka Egbuka from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Curious on your thoughts for Egbuka.
I actually don't have too many notes on him. And so just for that, I can't swipe right on somebody that I don't know very well. But that's really kind of all I got. I don't have a whole lot on him. I can't swipe right on a player I don't know. So I want to hear your thoughts, and then I can kind of tell you a little bit more based on what you say.
That's fair. He is the first rookie to appear on my fantasy football Tinder, and he scored 2 touchdowns last week, but he only caught 4 passes. So I thought that his usage was encouraging. He got 92% of the snaps in Tampa. He has clearly built rapport with Baker, and they play Houston, where a wide receiver 3 has a chance to go off because Derek Stingley in that Houston secondary is going to be focused on Mike Evans, presumably that wide receiver 1 in that offense, giving a lot of space for Egbuka and Baker to continue to connect. And I think an encouraging start is great with Baker, who's looking like he wants to sling it this season. So that's kind of my thoughts on Egbuka. 2 touchdowns and a rookie debut is really encouraging.
It is 92% of the snaps and only 4 receptions doesn't give me a lot of hope though, because if those 4 receptions aren't 2 of them being touchdowns, he's only got like 4 points, and then we're not even talking about him.
Well, he also
So
had
I would
60 yards. So
even then though, like nothing. The 2 touchdowns is the storyline there, and so if they stop him on any of those touchdowns, he does not have a great week 1 in terms of fantasy production. He's someone that I would sit on, meaning I would sit him this week, but I would keep an eye on him. I would watch him because he might be something that you want to play later. But to me, it's too much of a risk to play him right now.
gotcha. Some interesting disagreements this week. Curious to check back. I know I was a lot better with my fades last year than I was with my starts. So maybe Tyler fading 2 of my starts is a good choice. Maybe it's strategic. We'll see. I'm still new at giving recommendations on start and sit this year. So we'll continue to check back and kind of track my record throughout the year. Right now I'm batting about 50%. Which isn't very good, but a lot of unexpected
And that's
stuff
good in
happened.
baseball, though.
That's right. I'm better than Ichiro Suzuki right now. So we'll see lots of interesting storylines and games to check into on week 2. What are the 3 that we should be sat, popcorn in hand, ready to go, Tyler, for this upcoming week 2?
So the first one isn't necessarily like the matchup itself is like, yeah, it's gonna be Commanders versus Packers. The reason I want to highlight this game though is because it is a Thursday night game. We are very used to Thursday night games being these mediocre teams, Panthers versus Patriots, battle of the number 1 overall picks, garbage teams. This is not going to be a garbage game. This is going to be a potential preview for a playoff matchup. I would not be surprised at all if you bookmark this video when I say that Packers versus Commanders will be a divisional matchup. And I would not be surprised if I am correct on that. I'm calling it now, right, as a matter of fact. So don't sleep on Thursday night this week. There are plenty of times this season to sleep on Thursday night. This is not one of those times. Another one is a Sunday afternoon game. It is Bears versus Lions. This seems like, good 14-2 Lions versus really bad Chicago Bears. Not going to be a game. But the Bears played well. The Lions didn't play that well. It's also Dan Campbell versus Ben Johnson. He is going against his former head coach. Ben Johnson is Dan Campbell going against his protege. And I think there's going to be Zach. You and I were talking off air before we started. You said that there's going to be a lot of trick plays this game, and I agree with that. I think there's going to be at least like 3 trick plays per sideline this week. It's going to be electric, mainly because of the head coaches in this game, and I think it's going to be a good divisional matchup for week 2. And then my final one, of course, is going to be the Super Bowl rematch. I highlight this because maybe you didn't know that the Super Bowl rematch was happening this week because it's not prime time. It's in the 3 o'clock slate. Chiefs versus Eagles. I do anticipate this being a lot closer than the game was in February. This is going to be, I think it's nationally televised in every single part of the entire country. And so this is something that enjoy it, take advantage of that opportunity for everyone in the nation to be able to watch it and just watch Hurts versus Mahomes perform a magic show.
Yeah, I mean, every game that they've played together has been a good one except for the last Super Bowl. So don't expect that to be any different this week, especially with how these two teams looked in week 1. Lots of storylines are going to get some significant updates in that game. But I agree with your choices. I'm really excited to watch these 3 games specifically next week. And that's about all we have for you guys. So thank you for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed week 1 as much as we did. Even though our teams lost, football is back and we're happy about it. So tune into week 2 and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any week recaps the rest of the season. Take care.
Appreciate you guys.